What's the latest and up-to-datest? That's a line from some movie I remember seeing in college. Well, here it is, everybody. Oh, look, there's our symbol. It's the Liberty Conspiracy symbol, complete with Davros and his eye in the forehead as the top of the pyramid from 1984. And we'll show that a little bigger. Thank you, Russians. And there's a little Karl Marx, an X-ray, Frederick Bastier's statement, government is that great fiction by which everybody endeavors to live off the expense of everyone else. And we got Karl Kolchak getting ready to attack a zombie. Yeah, and of course the prisoner. Number 6, declared unmutual. All right, and many other things. Liberty Conspiracy News Notes. Here's the story, Morning Glory. Over the weekend, Donald Trump not only continued to facilitate the IDF engaging in mass carnage in Lebanon and Gaza, not only continued to lie about Iran's culture and relationship with neighboring nations. Of course, Iran is not the aggressive party in the Middle East, and he not only claimed he was going to blockade the Persian Gulf, as we suspected he might try to do, Donald Trump posted first intense criticism of Pope Leo XIV. So let's show you that right now, my friends. All right, about now, a funk soul brother. Pope Leo is weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy. He talks about fear of the Trump administration, but doesn't mention the fear that the Catholic Church and all other Christian organizations had during COVID when they were arresting priests, ministers, and everybody else for holding church services, even when going outside and being 10 and even 20 feet apart. So, may we pause, my friends, and ask who was president for a long period of time during that time when various governors and municipal agents were doing that? That would be Donald Trump. Who has an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution and who does not? That would be Donald Trump rather than the Pope. What does the 14th Amendment require? What does the 4th Amendment require? What does the 6th and the 5th and the 8th Amendment require? What do they require? Well, first, let's start with the 4th Amendment. In order to search a home or a person, a judge must issue a warrant based on the judge's determination of just cause. I don't even like that level because I don't support my neighbor having to pay for that so-called judge to get his money. And I don't like the arbitrary nature of the government claiming the power to determine what it is, even in the body of a judge. But it's supposed to be a public document, and Donald Trump is supposed to recognize that when cops apprehend people, when they break up church services, when they go into private parking lots, when they go into churches, when they go into bars, when they go into gyms, all those places, that's a breach of the 4th Amendment. Then shutting them down, that's a breach of the 5th and 6th Amendment and the 8th Amendment. You're supposed to be able to go to trial if you're accused of some crime. It's supposed to be a timely trial in front of a jury. And then there's not supposed to be any unwarranted punishment. That's wrong, according to the 8th Amendment. If it's undue punishment, like, say having not hurt anybody and not even been brought to trial and having your business shut down, well, maybe that is an infringement of the Bill of Rights, Donald. And it's the kind of thing that, you would think the chief executive who swore a friggin' oath to the Constitution might bother to remember when he posts stupid stuff like this. But he doesn't. He doesn't. He goes after the Pope for the things Donald Trump was supposed to stop. And the things that Donald Trump's emergency medical announcement on Friday, the 13th of March, 2020, set into motion because so many states adopted the model state health emergency plan promulgated from Johns Hopkins around 2003. You might remember it happening in your state. It happened in New Hampshire around 2005 when John Lynch was governor. He goes on, I won't read it all. He says, when they were arresting priests, ministers, and everybody else for holding church services. Hey, Donald, whom did ICE agents just shoot in the head with pepper ball pellets near Chicago? Oh, that would be a priest protesting your ICE goons going into the state contrary to Article 4, Section 4, claiming the power to police immigration and voluntary association, which first is completely unconstitutional and second is completely an abrogation of the spirit of the Golden Rule. Do you get this stuff? Does anybody understand this stuff? It's also, Donald, an abrogation of the Golden Rule to stand in the way of free association in the form of me wanting to give my money to somebody else and not you to pay ICE. It's also an abrogation of free association to block free trade by saying, you're going to have to pay more for that, otherwise you'll go to jail. It's called a tariff. Really? You see, the blockade that Donald Trump is starting in the Straits, or attempting to start in the Strait of Hormuz, and also the Persian Gulf, down further south from the Strait of Oman, those are also, in smaller form, blockades against you when we think of tariffs. He's blocking you from trading. There's no difference psychologically or morally from Donald Trump saying you can't trade in that region, we've got armed guards on boats that are going to stop you, and him telling you here domestically that you can't buy what you friggin' want to buy and people can't sell to you. Is there a difference? No, there is no moral difference. There is no moral inequivalency. They're perfectly equal. He says, I don't want a pope who criticizes the president of the United States because I'm doing exactly what I was elected, he says, in a landslide to do. Really, Donald? I thought you were elected to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution. Well, Pope Leo XIV took that intense criticism and he handled it very well. Donald Trump amped things up and he said even more. On Orthodox Easter Sunday, Trump posted this. Daniel Davis's response is very good. Daniel Davis Deep Dive writes, it is time, my fellow Christians living in America, to choose you this day, whom you will follow, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, or the man who comes dangerously close to blaspheming that Savior by putting himself on an equal level with him. And there is Donald Trump taking a meme that had been put out before. His team added to it, added these weird demonic images, added some of these eagles, and Donald Trump, in his bizarre Christ-like move, healing an old man. Now, first of all, that wasn't originally done by Trump. I don't know why someone would do that. Second of all, to then pick it up, would you ever do that? Even if you didn't believe in Christ, which I don't think Trump does, even if you thought you might be doing something fun, or you might be commenting in some other way that, oh, it's me healing the nation or something like that, wouldn't you have a few people in your corner saying, maybe kind of no. How about a big negative on that one? Ixnay on the ovnay, on the move, right? Probably not going to be taken too well. And so Trump had to explain himself. And of course, he didn't do a very good job of it because, of course, he had to lie.
Mr. President, did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better. And I do make people better. I make people...
Does anybody believe that? It's supposed to be him as a doctor? That is him as a doctor? You know how doctors do it. Was he performing Reiki? What's up with that? And it's funny. There are different people. Some of these characters in the AI art remind me of different people, like actors. I'm not even going to mention their names because I don't want to associate their names with this just absolutely flippant, son of flubber, stupid nonsense. And it just keeps bouncing along. Here is Trump again, criticizing the Pope. He's not your Pope. First of all, you're not friggin' Catholic. You don't have a Pope. You have idol worship. That's what you've got. And it's called the mirror.
That's going to say that it's okay to, and they're going to go back, filled up with oil.
Why did you attack Pope Leo on Truth Social?
I don't think he's doing a very good job. He likes crime, I guess. He hit us. Think of it. He's worried about fear. What about the fear when the ministers and the priests and all of those great people that were arrested during COVID, and in many cases they're outside 10 feet apart and they were arrested. So we don't like it. We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says...
When did the Pope say any of that stuff? The Iranians had a fatwa against nuclear weapons, Donald. You killed the guy who issued it. Also, your Justice Department was supposed to, if they believed in the Constitution, stop the local governors and mayors and others from infringing on freedom of association. But of course, you have no problem with that because your ICE goons will enter businesses now and do precisely the same thing. Have you thought about that, Donald? Of course you don't.
Crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapon so they can blow up.
Okay, so again, there is nothing on record in the past 25 years that shows operators within the Iranian government thirsting for a nuclear weapon. It was Donald Trump who pulled away from the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And that's where he's going to land again and try to call it a victory. Because if they pull back from all of this, then the only thing that can happen is Donald Trump will say, because of our threat, even if he's not successful in closing down the Gulf, he'll say, because of our threat, we got them to agree not to pursue nuclear weapons and to open things up to inspections of their nuclear power, which of course is exactly what he had under the JCPOA and exactly what he dropped in 2018. And by the way, if you saw the Sunday News Assembly, we saw a report already, and it remains to be finalized, that the Americans have agreed to the Iranian demands that the rest of the money that the American government has held in escrow in various countries should go back to Iran. The very thing that all MAGA people get all angry at Obama for doing, which was one of the only good things Obama actually did, which was to start returning some of that stolen money to the Iranians after 1979. Trump and his administration quietly agreed to that. You can see that in the Sunday News Assembly. Now, whether they actually pull through, who the heck knows? You can't tell. This guy's position on everything is about as fickle as his position on abortion. It's just finger to the wind. He'll say anything. And to get back to the Pope was very balanced in his response. Here are Judge Napolitano and Scott Ritter with the vid of Pope Leo.
Here's somebody who has no fear of him. Chris, cut number 5.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe I am called to do, what the church is called to do. If we're not politicians, we're not looking to make foreign policy, as he calls it, with the same perspective that he might understand it. But I do believe that the message of the gospel, blessed are the peacemakers, is a message that the world needs to hear today.
Well done. Well done. Good stuff. And feel free to drop your comments. We're going to check things out in the Rumble chat in just a minute, everybody. Feel free to spread the links and give it the thumbs up. And thank you again for doing the great thumbs up stuff. That's terrific. Again, it's worked out really, really well. And I really appreciate it because, as you know, we've had a little tug of war going with someone for the past month or so. And it's worked out really well. The more you're engaged, the better we've done in the algorithms. So that's terrific. Really appreciate that. Now, I mentioned here in the news notes, remember, Trump and his Zionista pals attacking Iran is an attempt to stop the evil rise of religious fanatics. Now, as I noted, the volume on this original piece was low, but it's worth recalling Marco Rubio's foolish rhetoric. 2 weeks ago, Marco Rubio, the people that run this country, Iran, are radical Shiite clerics. These are religious fanatics. Today, Trump posts an image of himself as Jesus. Every accusation is a confession. Yes, that is very, very true. So let's head on over and play for you that amped up sound of Marco Rubio that shows us that Marco Rubio is really very, very interested in continuing to be a big hero. Let me see if I've got it. I might have to go with the sound on the original. Yeah, I'll go with the sound on the original. It's going to be a little bit low, so I'm just too packed up with so much stuff. So here it is. Check this out. Marco Polo. Man, here he is. Marco Rubio. Watch out for those religious fanatics, everybody.
And that is what he is doing. From the very first night of this operation, the president made it very clear. People like this, and now what I'm talking about is not the people of Iran. The people that run this country are radical Shia clerics. These are religious fanatics.
Meanwhile, Mike Huckabee's hanging out having a picnic with genocide committers. And it's just nuts. It's absolutely crazy. After his attack on the Pope, Trump ended up doubling down. It's like a moment by moment, blow by blow, even indicting himself again by mentioning the lockdowns, which, of course, his medical emergency announcement on March 13th, 2020 facilitated on state levels because many had adopted the model state health emergency status. And as we said, Trump said, I don't think he's doing a very good job. Now, let's talk about Trump's attempt to engage in lockdown 3.0, not just 2.0. And hopefully we're hitting hard and coming through with some positive vibes here for you, fighting for freedom hard. 2.0 was the tariff disaster from last year, which is ongoing. Trump's attempt to engage in lockdown 3.0 will see him unable to do more than screech and put U.S. lives on the line in the Gulf. And, of course, over the weekend, Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett added to the lies about Iran. Burchett calls himself a believer in Christ. Well, here's what Hidden Report notes. Tim Burchett on Iran. They're not good people. They throw gay people off buildings. If a little girl wears makeup, they gouge her eyes out. If a little boy posts something on X, they hang him. These people are demonic. This is horrific atrocity. This coming from a guy, by the way, who's voted to send tons of money to Ukraine, which, of course, would go to the Azov battalion and Nazis killing ethnically Russian people in the Donbass. You know how that is, because Tim Burchett, he's just a winner. He's got it. He's like Beck sang about. He's a winner, baby.
I honestly don't think the talks ever stop. If I know Trump, he uses he uses diplomacy very well. It may be at the end of his fist, but he does. And by sending J.D. Vance, I think he showed the seriousness of this country. The problem is Iran just aren't good actors. They're not good people. You know that. They throw gay people off buildings if a little girl wears.
So let's just pause it there. How many times have the Iranians been willing to engage in negotiations that were actually setups for assassinations? When did the Iranians try to overthrow the U.S. government in 1953? Remember that? Remember those times? Remember that? Oh, yeah, they had the greasers. Remember they had the greasers and the gearheads and the whatevers. And then they had the Iranians. Remember all those gangs, the gangs in New York in the 50s? They were overthrowing everything. It was nuts. I remember those times. I was around. I remember. I was probably about 40 back then, because, like Mr. Burchett, I know how to tell the truth.
wake up, they gouge your eyes out. If a little boy posts something on X, they hang him. If you're raped, if you're a woman and get raped, they'll stone you.
Now, this is coming from a guy who, like you and I, can get online and actually watch video from Iran, which, you know, like we showed the other day and other people like Max Blumenthal took, and, you know, from Iran, downtown Tehran, women walking around, people riding around on scooters. I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Meanwhile, he's got the gall to say that while, of course, fathers are trying to dig up their daughters from the rubble of houses south of the Litani River in Lebanon. While, of course, they're blowing up ambulances in Lebanon with U.S.-made arms that this man helps make sure are fed your tax money. That's how unbalanced this is. That's how the power system works. Frederick Bastiat, government is that great fiction by which everyone tries to live off of everyone else. And they're living off us. And they're killing other people who will never get a chance to live. It's a very powerful video that was released showing on video some of the children who were killed in that 10-minute strike against the Lebanese. I want to give you more right now from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi lays out in plain terms why the Iranian government is not backing down from its valid claim to pursue nuclear power enrichment. Iran is a sovereign nation, and its government need not bow to others over peaceful activity. In fact, under the 2016 start of the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, from which Trump fled in 2018, Iran was able to engage in nuclear enrichment for power, was open to IAEA and U.S. inspections, and was supposed to get back all of the tens of billions the U.S. stole from Iran after the overthrow of the Shah. Trump dumped all of it, even as Israel, which has nuke weapons and an aggressive occupation genocide state, was and is receiving U.S. funds and arms, and was and is not open to inspections. So, of course, he knows what he's saying. And it's amazing to remember that the Iranians are making the sense. He says, why have we insisted and continue to insist so much on enrichment of uranium? Why are we unwilling to give it up, even if war is imposed on us? Because no one has the right to tell us what we should or should not possess. This is based on the principle of rejecting domination. Enrichment is my right under the laws, and whether I exercise that right or not concerns only me. The narrative that's been told to us for years and still continues, you have no right to enrich. Enrichment must be zero. Why? Because we're concerned, they say. If you're concerned, we're ready to address those concerns. Is there a question? We'll answer it. Is trust lacking? We'll build trust. But no one has the right to say to us, you can't have this because I don't want you to. And he goes on. Very good thinking. And of course, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz and international agreements, Trump again is in Never Never Land. Yet he is starting his attempt to block the strait. Here's anti-war on it. This is the latest, everybody. Trump says U.S. military has started blockade on Iranian ports as Iran calls it piracy. So here we go. President Trump said today, this coming out at 3:04 in the afternoon, that the U.S. military has begun enforcing a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz as Iran has denounced the move as, quote, piracy. U.S. CENTCOM said the blockade will aim to impede the passage of all ships. Got to stop that blockade with Maya for Maya. It's like the Powerpuff Girls. With a blockade, Miss Bella. That's right, Mayor. U.S. Central Command said the blockade will aim to impede the passage of all ships entering or leaving Iranian ports, including those in the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Oman. That's right, just like we thought. U.S. Navy ships will be enforcing the blockade from the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea east of the Strait of Hormuz. Exactly like we thought. CENTCOM. Now, if I thought of this, and if you thought of this, You got to figure the Iranians and the Omanis thought of this. Yeah. This is just so bad. CENTCOM also said it wouldn't block ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz that aren't linked to Iran, but such vessels would likely be blocked by Iran anyway. Well, guess what? What are you going to do about the Chinese there, Donald? Because the Chinese and the Iranians have contracts. Not a good idea. Let's go back to the news notes. Of course, I said this particular ship here appears to be challenging the U.S. blockade already. Let's recall that tariffs are blockades. Government regulations are blockades. Licensing statutes are blockades. Taxation is a blockade, stopping you from doing with your money what you want with a voluntary recipient. Is any of that untrue? No, it's not. That's why I'm an anarchist. There you go. It's the only logical outcome to anyone who believes in peace. Here is IRI Embassy in Armenia. An American voice says, listen up, Trump and every dumb F in Washington who still thinks the Strait of Hormuz is some kind of American parking lot. This ain't international waters. Never was, never will be. Under the law of the sea, every coastal country gets 12 nautical miles. Yes, that's right. Let me amplify on that because I've got it right here. Trump's current threat to create a choke point at the opening of the Gulf of Oman for all the Persian Gulf region, well, it's just as we expected and discussed on Liberty Conspiracy last month. And the Strait of Hormuz is only 21 nautical miles from north to south, meaning that it's not international waters. Under so-called international law, each nation can claim waters up to 12 miles from its coast. The strait is under the control of Oman and Iran. They actually overlap at one point. And Trump cannot hold it unless threatening people in home nations by claiming he will bomb them there or hit them with nukes. That's the only way he can do it. He can't hold it on the water. The water will be open because Trump can't keep any U.S. naval force safe at the opening of the Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Oman. He cannot supply them at all. He can't do it. So, here's what Daniel Davis says. So now the question, what are the rules of engagement? Are you going to destroy any ship that tries to break the blockade? Will you try to board a ship and take physical control? What if it's a Chinese ship with a Chinese flag? Will you destroy it? What about a Russian ship? As we mentioned yesterday in the Sunday News Assembly, if Trump tries to block the Strait of Hormuz, the Houthis will block the Red Sea at Bab al-Mandab. So there's Bab al-Mandab right there. Now, what's that going to do? Of course, it's going to block the Red Sea. Block, block, block. And of course, the Iranian Speaker of Parliament offered this jab to Trump. The Parliament Speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, said that Trump, enjoy the current pump figures. With the so-called blockade, soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 to $5 a gallon gasoline. Did you get gas? I got gas today. It's $4 a gallon in New Hampshire. Here in Russia. Yep. Mohammed says $4.10, $5.80 per gallon. It's a pointed message. It's going to be a lot higher. And he posted a screenshot of the prices of gas in Washington, D.C. Evidently, nobody on Donald's staff bothered to do that, to take that time. Enjoy the current pump figures. Now, I want to give you excellent coverage. This is from RT.
Live and worldwide at just after 7 p.m. here in Moscow. It's so good to have your company for right now here on RT. So having tried to use bombs to strong-arm Iran, Donald Trump is now blockading the Hormuz Strait following the failure of peace talks over the weekend. The U.S. president now says, quote, Iran's navy is laying at the bottom of the sea, completely obliterated, and if any of their fast-attack ships come anywhere close to our blockade, they will be immediately eliminated, end of quote. Well, earlier I spoke with RT's Marina Kozarev to break down all the latest developments.
It looks like he's about to make a terrible situation much, much worse, because this blockade does not only involve Iranian ports in Iran, we're also talking about Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf as well as the Gulf of Oman. And according to a note seen by Reuters, supposedly by U.S. Central Command, to seafarers, they are allowed to target all vessels regardless of flag. Now, unconfirmed reports, this is said by Reuters, so the blockade applies to all vessels. And it's unclear how the U.S. Navy will pull that off, because even though they, of course, have been getting in trouble getting access to that oil, we know that other countries have been getting access because they signed a special agreement with Iran, the so-called friendly countries. And Iran actually has been making money on that. About 100 tankers have transited this Strait of Hormuz since this whole thing began. And apparently Iran has been making for each passage $2 million worth every single time. When we say worth, because of course Iran doesn't want the U.S. to be making money through this, so they are of course dealing in mixed currencies, and they're looking for ways to expand that and to get other currencies involved as well. So this is not looking good for the U.S. at all. And again, we're talking about what kind of vessels. These vessels that are on friendly terms with Iran, many of them are going to places like China, like India. What is the U.S. Navy going to do? Chase them down? Highly unlikely at this point. And at the same time, you have Iran, the parliament right now debating adding more tolls so that they can make even more money from every single passage.
We are not only supposed to collect tolls from floating vessels carrying oil and energy entities. Every shipment of any kind passing through the Strait of Hormuz, even if it carries passengers or recreational tourists traveling to Iran or countries in the region, must have its owner pay the relevant tolls to Iran.
And again, paralyzing traffic in the Strait of Hormuz will not only harm Iran's economy, which is something that Trump wants to achieve also with this blockade, but again, it will harm everyone else around the world, because prices are already skyrocketing again. Right after his announcement about this blockade, we saw oil prices jump over $100 per barrel once again. And Iranians, to top this off, are laughing at Washington.
Enjoy the current pump figures. With the so-called blockade, soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 to $5 gas.
Yeah, so with the prices, they're just going to keep on going up, aren't they, Marina? Meantime, Trump said, we're going to have European allies help us to block the Strait of Hormuz. Well, UK Starmer said, no, we're not going to get involved. Spain is shutting down its NATO bases for America. Germany's chancellor, deeply unpopular, says we don't want to have anything to do with this right now. It sounds like a disaster in the making.
It is a disaster. First of all, like you said, no one wants to get involved. But on top of this, Iranians have another trick up their sleeve that they could easily use. And that's another critical chokehold there. And that is called the Bab el-Mandeb, which is situated between Yemen, Djibouti, and Eritrea in the Horn of Africa there. Another critical shipping route for the entire globe. And what we have there is it's going from the Persian Gulf through the Suez Canal onto Europe and beyond. So if Iran closes that will be another blow to the global economy. But for now, let's come back to the Strait of Hormuz with everything happening there, or about to start. Well, Iran's special forces have another stark warning.
The security of ports in the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman is either for everyone or for no one. If the security of the ports of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the waters of the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is threatened, no port in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman will be safe.
So it's all about to go down, it seems. We're just waiting to see which vessel will be there first, what the U.S. Navy will do, the regional players also as well. What will they do? Will they get involved to protect the vessels or not? It's so interesting.
Good stuff from RT. There's more embedded inside the Substack, in my Substack. Want to hop over now next to the next piece that we produced and recorded earlier today. Excellent coverage from Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams of this, with some key nuances that they picked up from people they follow in journalism and on X, oftentimes both the same, they cross the streams. And then I want to give you some other pieces that come from Pepe Escobar and the people at DD Geopolitics that I think are pretty key points about rail lines connecting Iran to China that have been hit by the Israelis, and something else in Jerusalem that is a pretty big deal and apocalyptic in nature.
Okay, let's see what we can contribute to the problems that this country faces. Well, I called you over the weekend, I think 2 minutes after I heard that our leader, for some people at least, the at least token leader of this country said that he was going to put a blockade on those dirty old Russian, dirty old Iranians, because they were causing trouble. But that's confusing. If our leader's saying that Iran is causing all the trouble, why has the trouble been identified that we contributed to it? Our taxpayers' money contributed to all this mess. So I'm just a little bit confused on this, and the putting a blockade and making sure nobody goes up and down the Strait of Hormuz unless Trump says so.
Yeah.
That seems to be arrogant, and it seems like it would annoy a lot of people, and it seems like it will make the enemies that they've been declared as enemies more determined than ever. And the other thing that it might do is weaken any support we get from allies who are sympathetic to what we have. We have wealth, we have weapons, and we have trade and these things, so people don't like to rock the boat. But maybe this is going to annoy some of them and just say, I don't know whether we should just follow along. A couple of them just flat out said, no, we're not going to come along. We're not going to send our kids over there to open up the strait because we don't happen to think that it needed to be closed in the first place. Why did we go 6,000 miles away to look for a fight? But one of the headlines that I thought caught my attention, at least on Zero Hedge, Trump begins blockade of Hormuz Strait, says Iran, quote, will not be allowed to profit from extortion. And I thought, profit? Who's making the money, on this? But who is the greatest extortionist that we know? Who threatens with sanctions and tariffs and bombs if countries don't do what we tell them to do? And this has played a part. But I think that sometimes the country that participates and initiates these things, sometimes they go broke, running out of money because they don't get what they want. So we're in the middle of, I think, a significant change on attitudes and how much chance is of maybe really significantly, expanding the violence around the world. And there's Country Today said, what we ought to do is invade Israel because we think Netanyahu is the big problem. And you might laugh at it. Who's going to do that? Because that would be like taking on Israel and United States at the same time. But anyway, they're getting a little bit antsy about these conditions, and I think it was dangerous from the beginning. But the danger has expanded, and that's what upset me when I first heard this. A blockade. This takes an effort, and when I think of what the conditions were, just 2-3 years ago, price of oil and how many Americans were suffering from shooting and killing and bombing, and I thought we learned our lesson. All the way from Vietnam to Afghanistan, our lesson in Ukraine, and we did. Ronald Reagan taught us a big lesson about Lebanon, even though we totally ignore that lesson that was taught. So here we are, just several months later, and the thing has deteriorated. Guess what, Daniel? Oil prices have gone up. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you noticed that, but gasoline is up high, and that's going to get some people's attention, just like the higher costs of groceries has gone up. It caught the people's attention, and that's good. But what isn't good is if they blame somebody else and they don't blame the real cause of the rising prices, which devastates the middle class and the poor. And we've been running that problem on for quite a few years. So this mixture of a deeply flawed foreign policy as well as the economics problems that are piling up on us, we have some deep thinking to do, especially for the generation that right now is going to be taking over many of these decisions. And that, to me, is the key to which way this country goes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's useful to do a timeline again. I try to do it every day almost because things happen in such a rapid fire manner. But I think it was last Thursday night that President Trump posted on his Truth Social that a whole civilization will die tonight. And that really freaked a lot of people out, understandably so, because that's kind of genocidal language. And so before his deadline came, there was a sort of a rapid panicked attempt to find some way to walk it down. And they were able to get Pakistan to release a message on X saying, well, we're going to have a 2 weeks pause in fighting so that we can see if we can have talks. Well, that happened on Saturday. That Vice President Vance went to Islamabad and met with the Iranian delegation. They talked for 21 hours. Apparently from Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, things were going fairly well. It's a long talk. They even met face to face. But then at the very last minute, Vice President Vance threw in some maximalist demands, as in you can never enrich uranium. You have to get rid of your nuclear plants, and you have to hand over the material. To which Iran said, why are you even bringing this? This is not what we're talking about. There's nothing to happen. So the talks break down.
Now, I want to pause it there because you might have heard the same thing I have, that Netanyahu was constantly in touch with these guys and that was intervention from Netanyahu. Either way, we know that the Americans don't engage in honest negotiations, and these aren't even negotiations anyway. It's a shakedown. It's not as if Iran wanted something from the United States and they had to come to some sort of anthropomorphic negotiated settlement. It's the United States and Israel attacking a sovereign country, contrary to all of the international agreements the United States helped cobble together to form the UN. For goodness sake, it's amazing. It's just so stunning. You know, and I contemplate back when I worked at Star Trek, because as you know, Gene Roddenberry was one of these big boosters of the United Nations coming out of World War II. I often mention a lot of these guys out of World War II thought that the UN would be the answer rather than having nation states and, you know, seeing potential conflict between them. Oh, if you could just have one giant overlord the way Hobbes would want it, you know, the giant Leviathan, everything would be fine. Well, it didn't work too well, obviously, because, of course, the UN is pretty much been the United States plaything and has siphoned off tons of tax money for them to do what the United States government wants them to do most of the time, whether it's for social manipulation or anything else.
And it seems like President Trump then gets angrier and angrier because he starts putting out posts angry that Iran is controlling who goes in and out of the Straits of Hormuz. Well, why did that happen, President Trump? Well, that's because you did a sneak attack on them. And they said, oh, yeah, well, we're gonna seize the strait then. You know, that's what happens. So then angrier and angrier, Trump said, okay, well, if you're going to blockade the strait, then we're going to blockade your blockade. So take that. Right. You know, it's almost like two kids fighting. But that apparently is the case. And apparently just about 2 hours ago, the U.S. announced that it will interdict any ship that comes out of an Iranian port and then exits the Persian Gulf, toward in the south direction. And we haven't seen any challenges yet. We don't know how it's implemented yet, but that's at least what the announced policy is.
So I think that a lot of us struggle to understand the thought process of anybody in politics and the people that's in the current administration. Certainly we deserve some attention. And this quote I want to use now to try to understand this or continue to understand it, because the evidence isn't dug out in secrecy. Sometimes the evidence of this confusion and the answer to it is blurted out by our leader.
Yeah.
And I want to read the one quote that caught attention a couple months ago, and that was in the January 2026 interview. President Donald Trump stated that his own morality and mind are the sole final constraints on his power. He noted that this personal internal compass is the only thing that could stop him, stating, "I don't need any international law." And,
so I just want to pause it there because from an anarchist philosophical standpoint, one of the things that I like to do in class is explore ethics and morality. And oftentimes, we explain to people that morality is the knowledge or the awareness of good and evil. Ethics is the outward expression, that is morals in action within interpersonal space. And so when we see Ron Paul bringing up this international law and things like that, one of the things that we discuss in class, just as a quick little spice here, a little thumbtack to put in the corkboard as we roll here, is the idea that statutes somehow will make people moral is an impossibility, because one cannot say that someone is acting good because he's going to be punished if he doesn't act good, right? Morality, you've got to decide for yourself. I am going to act good, not because of a potential negative outcome, but because simply it's good or evil. That's all. And so the anarchist lesson that comes out of this is you don't need the statutes. You don't need the state, which of course can only be run through coercion, extortion, threats of violence, and taxation. You don't need that superstructure and the false notions that they try to feed to people that it is protecting people and somehow bringing about a just and moral society, when we don't know whether those people are moral, because maybe some of them are simply acting that way because they know that they'll be worse off by the government if they don't conform. So just like one cannot say that an agreement done under duress is actually an agreement, one cannot say that good action done with the knowledge of threats of negative consequences by the state is good action. It's actually a disconnect. You can't make the connections. It has to be done through individual moral volition. And the state is not based on individual moral volition. So the only way that you can see whether your neighbors are good or bad people is to remove the state and have voluntary interactions. Now, even there's the possibility of social ostracism and things like that. But that is at least done on individual choice levels of the people who are deciding not to associate. They're not telling others through the state, hey, I don't want to associate with this person, and I'm going to make it that you can't associate with this person either. Everybody decides for him or herself, just like in a regular marketplace. And that's one of the major important ethical distinctions between the state and individual volition, because the state doesn't allow for that space for people to be able to make their own decisions and actually reflect what the culture and society actually values. It's all done through force. Some more from Ron Paul.
I think this is interesting because we essentially argue we don't need the UN and NATO and all these things to tell us how to live a moral life. And I think the biggest thing is who's telling the truth and why they're telling the truth. But when you aren't interested in the international law, what they're saying is in a way that they're against positive law. And I always become annoyed with positive. That sounds good. But positive law is anything written by the government as a positive. We wrote it down, and that's the law of the land.
Yeah.
The people who challenge that are the people who forever and do their best to challenge everything that we do in life and challenge for the truth. The perfect truth is available for us to seek, but it's not achievable. But it makes a big difference if the goal was a authoritarianism, where you're not going to have any laws whatsoever, and one person can make all these decisions. That will end badly. And this is the attitude, and this sort of explains why, he almost admits, well, it depends on what my mood is.
Yeah.
When I wake up, how do I feel today? Should we bomb somebody or blockade somebody? And the one thing is, as a consequence of this, when somebody has this much confidence in their self and their own thinking, that they cannot stand the people who want to blurt out the truth. And that, of course, is what we see going on now, where the people who challenge the administration and the policies that we have now, they're the enemy. And they're the ones who are to be punished, even though those people who are doing that and blurting out the truth were very much enthusiastic about and hopeful about the president. And we express some hopeful times too.
Yeah.
Right now, I think there's plenty of disappointment to go around.
Yeah, that's true. And this is just another example of what at least it appears to us. We're not in the Oval Office or whatever, but President Trump coming up with an idea, blurting it out through his social media account, and then expecting everyone else to work out the details. I think that's a dangerous way of governing. But there you have it. And I think I had a couple of clips here to demonstrate that I think he didn't think this thing through. I just think he got mad and said, I'm going to release this, and you guys sort out the details. Put up that first clip. Now, this is from the Zero Hedge article. Trump, Iranian ships coming near blockade will be eliminated. That sounds like a serious threat. The Trump-ordered U.S. military blockade of the Hormuz Strait has gone into effect as of early evening local time, 10 a.m. U.S., and Trump soon after issued the below truth social message warning that if any of Iran's ships, which he says at this point are merely small, fast attack ships, come anywhere near our blockade, they will be eliminated. Now go to the next one. A couple of just reactions to it. Ashes of Pompeii, which I have published on the Ron Paul Institute website. I think this author, who I know but prefers to write under a pseudonym, has some good insights. He writes, so a blockade to break the blockade. That would presumably be a blockade at more than 1,500 kilometers because the U.S. Navy doesn't go closer than that. How would the Chinese and Asian allies of America react to that and the economy? Now, that's a good point. A couple points from Patricia Marians. Dr. Paul, she is a Brazilian military analyst, and I think she's also has a lot of insights. If we can put that next one up. When Trump announced the blockade, he believed it would be a powerful measure capable of increasing pressure on the Iranian regime, cutting off its revenues. He failed to consider, and this is the theme I was trying to flesh out here, Dr. Paul, what he failed to consider is that the ships leaving the strait are not Iranian. They're Pakistani, Iraqis, Indians, and above all, Chinese. How exactly does Trump plan to intercept these vessels? He can impose a blockade on Iran, but seizing legally operating ships in international waters simply because they're trading with an adversary of the U.S. is far more complicated. And even if a move were somehow executed, it would only remove more oil from the global market and drive prices higher. So that last point I think is important, Dr. Paul, because she's saying, even if this is successful and they do block all the ships, the reward for the success is huge spike in oil prices and other prices. So
absolutely right. And I want to touch on some of the economics and then start talking a little bit about the lines of communication for trade between Iran and China, which are very, very important.